All right, guys, welcome back to another edition of the Addictively Speaking podcast. Tonight, my guest is Chris Morris. He is an author and he has a book published called We Are All Made of Scars. Chris, welcome to the podcast, man.
Yeah, thanks, James. Thanks for having me. This is amazing. Love this.
No, I appreciate you coming on. So do you want to, for the listeners, give everybody a little brief introduction of who you are and what brought you on the podcast?
Yeah, so I'm Chris Morris. So, like you said, I've got this book, We're All Made of Scars. And by day, I work in the finance industry and specifically in credit unions. And have two daughters, 18 and 21, which is wild to me. And yeah, I've just been in recovery on the Al-Anon side for the last 12 and a half years. So this book was kind of my way of sharing my story of, my encounter experiences with alcoholism and stuff like that. So yeah.
Cool. So you wrote the book and was it just published last year, I think?
Yeah, 2023 just came out, and it's been, again, like beyond anything I ever thought. Just the fact that people identify with it and people feel less alone. And the cool thing is, since it came out a year ago, is just so many people telling me their stories, and again, realizing the title of the book is We're All Made of Scars, and finding out like, oh wow, we're all truly made of scars. Even people that I work with or know tangentially have pretty hard stories.
Yeah, I think it's fundamentally, and I think, when people say like, oh, you had a good childhood or you got out of that, but we
Yeah,
all have our own scars, like no matter what,
right.
like we all hold on to things, all these things in our lives, we, what one person might find minuscule might be scarring for another. It just
Yeah,
depends on the person and how they handle the trauma and the adversity and what they do with it. Um, so this is a story about your life. Was it hard to tell a story about your life and your family in particular?
yeah. That it's a good question, and it's one of those things too. I've heard from so many people the last year, like, "Wow, you're so brave," and that you're like, "I appreciate your vulnerability." And I don't think I could have done this 10 years ago, for sure. I
Mm,
tell folks in the program all the time, when I first started going into Al-Anon and things like that, or there's this other 12-step meeting called Adult Children of Alcoholics. And I remember the
mm.
first like 6, 7 meetings, I didn't say anything other than my name because I was just so overwhelmed. Like, oh my gosh, other people have the same story of me as me and things like that. And it took years and years of kind of recovery and therapy and shedding shame and really being comfortable with who I am and my story and overcoming, working through the trauma of these scars and things like that for me uh, to tell this story. So that's kind of a long answer to your question, but I
Mm.
don't think, this isn't something that's done easily. You do have to kind of prepare yourself. And yeah, as Brene Brown, who I love, she often says, like, you have to step into the arena. Like, you're putting yourself out there when you're, you know, laying this
Yeah,
all out
you're
for
really you're exposing yourself to
totally.
everybody and everything, to
Yeah,
have a look at your life and judge it on a wide scale.
right.
Um, did you find it to be like also like a bit cathartic to release all that onto paper? Because I think like like sometimes people will say like write something horrible down that and then burn it and then it's gone forever. So now you've lifted this weight off yourself. Do you feel that at all?
Yeah, I definitely do. And it's so interesting because I knew it would be, but I didn't know how much so. Like, I thought for sure I'd hear um, at least a couple people being like, oh, I can't believe you did that. But by and large, across the board, the support has been amazing. And I guess I wasn't expecting that. But it is cathartic in the sense of like, they say in the programs, like, you're only as sick as your secrets. And I was like, I just put like the heaviest stuff I went through out there for everyone to
Hmm.
see. Like, it's out there. And that's pretty freeing to just know that,
Yeah, that you're not
people know
hiding
what
anything.
experiences are like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so tell everybody a little bit about your your story, like where it starts and what it was like for you growing up with a was an alcoholic parent?
Right. Yeah. The book in particular talks about, and it's hard because you were just talking about sharing your story, and I encourage listeners. I mean, it's a pretty cathartic, healing, interesting thing to write your story out from, you know, beginning to end, so
Mm,
to speak. Um, but when I was thinking about it, I chose kind of my teenage years with my mom. My mom was the alcoholic because that's when her drinking got worse and my life got really hard. But yeah, my story starts, when I was younger, a little kid, growing up in and around Chicago, in America.
mhm.
And yeah, not really realizing, when you're a kid, you don't know when people are drunk, really necessarily.
Yeah.
And you just don't know. And I know my mom was drinking here and there, but it wasn't until you start getting older, like 11, 12, 13. I was like, oh, wow, mom is sick a lot, or she's sleeping, in quotes, and
Mm,
not feeling well. Like, she would send me, I talk about this in the book a lot, when I was in second grade. These were clues to me where she's like, Chris, I'm not feeling well. Could you run to the grocery store and get us milk and stuff like that? So here I am, and gosh, 7 years old, going to the grocery store by myself, thinking like, wow, I'm so grown up. This is amazing. Not really realizing my mom was, unable to
yeah.
do it herself. That was kind of the first instance where I was like, something's not right here at home. Um, yeah, and that can kind of continued up until uh, gosh, 11, 12, 13. All of a sudden my mom's like, can you go to the store and get me cigarettes? And she would write me little notes to give to
Mhm.
the guy at the liquor store to get cigarettes. And I still, to this day, have a little bit of anxiety going into liquor stores because when you're 11, 12, you shouldn't be in there buying, at least in America, buying cigarettes or um,
But do
alcohol,
you know what's
because the
fun
cigarettes, yeah,
do you know what's funny about that is that, like,
hmm,
do you remember I just think, like, back to when I was a kid in, like, the '80s, and my mom would send me across the street to the corner
yeah,
store, and she'd send me with a note with her I'd like a
yep,
pack of Pall Mall, and she'd give it to
right,
me with the money, and I would go get it, right? But, like, in the '80s, that was just, like, such a common thing, like, you would just send your kid out for,
totally.
like, your cigarettes or your whatever, and the people at the shops would just be like, "Here you go, here's your pack
I
of
know,
Pall Mall, have a great day." "Take them
I
back to your
know,
mom, tell your mom I said hi," and you just, like,
right.
back across the street.
I know. Well, yeah, and this is the '80s, same thing with me. And though this guy, he was a little bit more like, what's going on? What's this kid doing? Um, so it was a little different. And then when I started getting all of a sudden the notes were for wine too. So it was just like, I'm
Mm,
this riding my
yeah.
bike with cigarettes and wine. I was like, this is not when my buddies are playing Nintendo at home, and I'm like, you know, have a
You're
brown
out
bag
you're
in
out
my lap
doing
trying to get home.
yeah, a little
So
bit of a
different.
different scenario.
Yeah, so
Um,
different.
so, obviously, you've now kinda clocked this at a young age. Um, did it affect you in any way in your youth? Like, did it affect you negatively, or were you just kind of like you kinda realized, but you're kinda still like a kid and oblivious to the dangers of it all?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was definitely around the time that I noticed, like, okay, something's going on at home. Like, my friends aren't dealing with this, and I realized too, all of a sudden, that I stopped inviting my friends over to my house, and I thought that was a pretty big shift. Like, oh, all of a sudden, this is a secret. We're hiding this. Um, so that's obviously, in hindsight, a lot of the shame around it started. And as my mom's drinking got worse, especially as a teenager, the book mostly talks about my teenage years, and it's like, as my mom's drinking got worse and worse and worse, because she remarried, and my stepdad, he traveled and he was in a different state, so it was like my mom had no one to kind of keep tabs on her except for me and my younger brother. So my mom was just drinking, you know, with total freedom. And of course, if you're 14, 15, I was like, this is unfortunately for me, like this is amazing. I have no boundaries. I could, go out all the time. I started smoking pot, stop going to school. It was kind of a recipe for disaster. So when you say negatively, it's like, yeah, I kind of did all the things you weren't supposed to do as a teenager because I had no rules at home.
Yeah, you had free reign.
Totally,
Um,
totally.
w- with your mom drinking so heavily in your teenage years, did that lead you into also starting to drink as well, to dabble in that arena, or was it just start smoking weed, or like where did it
Yeah.
go?
Yeah, and it's so interesting now because when I talk about smoking weed, I feel like it's not as because in America, especially, like it's legal in many states and things like that.
Mhm.
But in the '90s was like that was the
Yeah,
gateway drug, and it was terrible. And
yeah, it was ruining
it's like,
families. It's tearing us apart. But nobody's
yeah,
worried about the alcohol people are consuming, which is actually
no,
tearing people apart.
I know,
But I mean, let's pot. Let's get rid of that.
yeah, well, and yeah, that's total sidebar. But I mean, even
Yeah,
now, drinking culture, it's like it's the one drug that everyone is like, no, it's fine. Let's promote it all we can.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot of money to be made in it, and it makes
Well,
tons of revenue. And Budweiser sponsors this at the Super Bowl, and Jack
right,
Daniels is on every commercial. Come on, I get it,
I know,
but if we're gonna be honest, like, there's a lot more people that die of alcohol than ever die of weed, and
I know.
that's a fact, and that is statistical.
Yeah,
You can
no,
look
it's
at the numbers.
absolutely. But it's interesting though. When I was a teenager, maybe it's because of my mom, but I wasn't. We would, like classic teenagers, we would get beer, alcohol, and drink a little bit, but it was mostly like
Mhm.
weed and other things.
Mm.
But that's really it. I mean, thankfully, and since then, I've probably been over. What would I say? Definitely more mindful. So I've probably been drunk like on one hand, the times that I've been drunk, I can count because I'm so paranoid. Because I always think, because I have alcoholism on both sides of my family tree, and I think like, okay, none of them wanted to become an alcoholic, so
Yeah.
maybe that's how it starts, getting drunk here and there. Like I don't know. So I'm like, I just really,
Yeah, yeah. But
I'll be very
that's the
mindful of.
thing. That's the thing, like, alcoholism is like a very weird game of Russian roulette, and people
Yeah,
automatically think that because alcoholic, right? When you say an alcoholic, you have a picture in your head. It's what
right.
TV portrays to you. It's this
Yeah,
guy with a brown bag and a bottle, and he's sleeping on a park bench, and he's an alcoholic. He's lost it all. But that's not the case across the board, you
no,
know? There's
no,
different versions of that for everybody, and there's people that like, for me, mine is moderation. I can't
right,
moderate. I have a switch. I either drink a lot or I can't drink at all. I
right.
have to be I'm 0 to 100. So once I start, best believe I'm going to the upper echelons of drunk. So I just could never figure out how to like I would be really confused at people who sat and could drink like 3 beers and be like, "All right, man, I'm gonna go home." I'm like, strange.
Right.
I'm gonna get blackout drunk tonight.
Mm,
But my intention was never to enjoy it. It was always to get wasted. I was to get
mm,
fucked up.
right.
So yeah, so it was just a bad relationship. But that's a form of alcohol abuse. It's not alcoholism. I'm not addicted to the alcohol. I don't get the shakes, but it ruined the shit out of my life, like
Mm.
just the same. Um,
Yeah, makes so much
anyway.
sense. And I finally got to the point where I can enjoy it, but it's something that I try to even now save for kind of special occasions. But even then, I'm like, I don't know. Since the book has come out, I've been drinking way less because anytime I'm out in the world at events and things like that, or for my work, I go to a
Mhm.
lot of conferences and there's a lot of drinking in conferences and social events, and it always feels weird to me to have this heartfelt talk about my mom's alcoholism, and I'm holding like a beer or an old fashioned or a Guinness, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
all right, well, this feels weird to me, so I
Yeah, you're
haven't
not
even
really
been doing
selling
that.
it.
Yeah,
You're not
exactly.
selling
Like,
it.
yeah,
You're not
alcoholism is
selling it at
terrible.
all. You're like, "Oh, man, this alcoholism is so bad. You want another beer? Yeah, I'm gonna grab
Yeah,
another beer, yeah. Yeah, it's so horrible.
exactly.
It's ruining people. It's ruining people. Let
Right.
shots? Shots? Absolutely." No, yeah,
Right.
I could see how that would be kind of defeating the purpose. Um, so how bad did it get with your mom? How far did it go?
Well, I went. So my parents divorced when I was 5, and my mom bounced around. And like I said, she got remarried, and kind of the situation where she had this perfect drinking, free reign situation. So I got to the point where I'm kind of condensing so much, but in the book I talk about, as soon as I turned 16, I got my driver's license. My stepdad said, "Okay, now it's your turn to take her to the ER and rehab." And because my
Jesus.
mom got in this cycle where she would drink for like 3 4 weeks, we'd send her to rehab, and then she'd be there. She'd come home, be sober for a week or so, drink another 3 weeks, and it just kept going. And then finally, I kind of became my mom's caretaker. And
Mm.
over the course of a few years, my stepdad finally is like, you know what? I think I'm good. I'm spending all this money. Nothing's changing. He didn't have the tools or resources to emotionally or even
Yeah.
physically deal with the situation. So my mom moved into a motel. I moved in with my alcoholic grandmother, who I didn't know was alcoholic, and then my mom's drinking got now she's in a hotel. She's just
Yeah.
selling
She's
everything,
lost
drinking,
everything.
lost
Yeah, what else
everything.
is there?
You would
Yeah,
think
what else
that's
is
her
there?
bottom, but she's like, nope. And it got
No.
to the point where I just dropped out of high school my last year. I was really bouncing around, working at McDonald's, um, not a lot of promise in my life. And my mom starts calling me every day, like, Chris, I need you to bring me cigarettes. I need you to help me with some money, blah, blah, blah. And to the point where she was threatening me. And then she actually tried to commit suicide. She jumped in front of a truck. And that's when I was
Jesus.
like, okay, I think, things are not good. And that's when I realized very quickly, like, and this is kind of the classic Al-Anon thing of like, my life was spiraling out of control in relation to my mom's. And I saw the writing on the wall because I'm like, wow, I'm like 18 years old, doing a lot of drugs. I don't have all my friends just started college. I'm working at McDonald's. I have no future. So I joined the army, which was the most crazy radical thing. And my mom, that was kind of a bottom, but she kind of stumbled along and got remarried again. And then she died 12 years ago now from drinking. So that's I don't know how worse it got. I mean, I think her dying could be the worst. It could be her kind of throwing
Was
everything
it
away. I mean, it's hard to say.
was it directly related to the alcohol? Was it cirrhosis of the liver, or was it just uh, like drank
Yeah,
too much, threw up,
it's
funked
a
out?
hard thing. But yeah, when she died, I mean, I honestly, this is hard to say, but I often would wonder in those last few years. I'm like, I'm kind of surprised that she has lasted this long. Just the way she treated her body with
Mm.
drinking, and she had diabetes and all these health stuff. And you know how it is with
Oh,
addicts. My mom,
yeah.
she would call me and tell me like, oh, now I have cancer. Oh, now I have this, and I never knew like what was real and what wasn't. But when I would see her, I'm like, wow, she does not look. She's in
Yeah.
her late 40s, and it's like she does not look well.
Wow. Late
Yeah,
40s. I mean,
I know.
that's
She,
that's young.
she Yeah, and she lasted till she was 57. But even then, when she died, it was like I remember my newer stepdad calling me, and I'm like, "Well, what happened?" He's like, "Well, you know." It was just like no one even checked because it was like, "Well, we all know." Like, come on, like she. I was like, "Okay, well, so yeah."
Do you think joining the military was like the best decision for you in that moment was to get out of that situation because it was all kind of spiraling, with you and with her and it was all kind of, do you think it was the best thing you could have done for yourself was to remove yourself?
I think so because I had a moment where I was like, if I don't do something drastic, I'm gonna be dead or in jail in 5 10 years. Because I remember thinking like my mom is twice my age, and she didn't start getting on this path until she was late in her 30s or something, and I'm like, not in a good spot. And I don't know if the army was, if I could go back sometimes, I'm like, would I have done that? But I needed like a big eject button because I remember thinking like I just need to somehow physically, emotionally, everything get out of this situation. And joining the army just seemed like the most absolutely crazy radical idea of like, what if I went from this situation to like being in a war zone, you know, with camouflage, like GI Joe?
Yeah.
It just seems so ridiculous. I was like, maybe that's the way to go. Like, why not? And it was. I mean, to go from all that stuff with my mom, her jumping in front of a truck, and me, you know, not sure what to do, and then 6 months later, I'm in Germany. That's where I was stationed in Germany. I'm like in these 1,000-year-old cities, looking at castles, going like, "Wow, okay, this was a good idea."
So she jumped in front of it. Did she get hit by the truck? Was
Get
she
hit by the
hit?
truck.
She was hit.
Yeah. So, and I talk about in the book. I mean, it's a long story, but it was like after weeks of her calling me every day and threatening suicide, and you know, I need you to pick me up because she didn't have a car, and I went
Mm-hmm.
to pick her up, and we had to run some errands, and then she's like, "Oh, can we just make one more stop or something like that?" And I was like, "Ah, this is what we're really about. Like, you need money for,
Mm.
you know, drinking or cigarettes." And then when I refused, I was like, "Listen, I have to pick up my girlfriend or whatever at the time," and she just was like, "Oh, fine, nobody cares about me." She slammed the door, walked away, and I was like, "Okay, this is my mom for the 200th time saying this." So I drove away, and then that night, my grandma called me. She's like, "Oh, your mom jumped in front of a van, or I think it was a van, um, and this is what happened." I was like, "Wait," and then as I pieced the story together, it was like the light was green. It was like everything lined up. Like, oh, my mom, it wasn't an accident. Like, she followed through with whatever. And the thing that's scary, you know, with addiction, like, I don't know, because I've thought about this a lot. I'm like, did she do that to hurt herself, or was it more to teach me a lesson? Like, oh, you didn't want to do that? Well, fine. I'm gonna do the thing that I said I was gonna do.
Yeah, or yeah, because it locks you in. You know, you're guilty. She's
Hmm.
done something to herself,
Yeah.
and now
Right. So
she
next
told you she
next
was
time,
gonna do it, and you didn't believe her, and she jumped in front of a truck, and now you're like, oh shit, is she gonna kill herself, or was she gonna, you know?
yeah,
So you kind of get it, kind of pulls you, it draws you back in. It's weird because
totally.
it's like the most extreme form of like manipulation. Like she's manipulating you to do what she wants, but by like the most extreme way of doing it. Like I
Totally.
did she go to the hospital? Like, was she hospitalized for it for a while,
Yeah.
or?
No, and she was in the hospital for a little while. And I think again that was a turning point for me, because seeing her in the hospital with, you know, her head shaven, she had stitches, and I'm just like, wow, like we reached a point where it's like, what is going on? You know, whether she was trying to do that to manipulate me, or she truly was a call for help. You know,
Yeah,
I don't know, but I was
at the
like, this
end,
is,
yeah,
yeah,
fed up.
it's too much.
Um, so she does that. Did you ever think, like, with the rehabs and stuff like that, when you were sending her to rehabs, did you ever like wonder, like, you know, what it was going to take for her to realize? Did she ever like admit that she had a problem, or was it just constant denial of the fact?
Yeah, I mean it's hard because when you're a teenager, you know, I didn't understand alcoholism, and it wasn't until years later I was in the program and I heard someone say, you know, you didn't cause it, you can't cure it, you can't control it, kind of stuff. And I was smart enough to know, you know, after the fourth, fifth rehab attempt, my mom was loving and everything, and she would say like, "Yeah, I want to stop," and things like that. But it was just like, wow, nothing's sticking. Like we're doing all the things that apparently you're supposed to do, right? And
Right.
I remember talking to one of the counselors, and he's like, "Alcoholism is a disease. Like it's, you know, your mom is also, she's trying, but you know, it's winning right now against her." And so I was smart enough to know, like, okay, there's nothing that I can do. So I know that from, I used to spend a lot of time at Alateen, and it's easy to think like, wow, am I doing something that's causing this? But thankfully, I didn't
Mm,
really ever have that um, view. But it is hard because those are listening, and you probably know, you know, those when you're around alcoholism, like my mom would have good stretches, and she was this loving, good mom, and you can have one or two good days, and that keeps you going for a long time amongst, you know,
mm,
weeks and weeks of binge drinking. So there's denial that comes on the part of those that love addicts of like, well, she's drinking a lot now, but we had that one night, and you know, maybe we can get that
Yeah,
night again. So
maybe that'll we'll fix it, or maybe
right,
she'll have a couple more days like that. Yeah,
right,
it's tough
right.
because it is a tricky thing to navigate, and it's your mom. Like ultimately,
Yeah,
you love her, you
totally.
know, and you just want to see her healthy and
Yeah,
happy, and you know, it's tough to battle those moments where you're not sure what you should do, especially as a teenager. Like you're trying to
well,
grow up yourself and become an adult.
right.
Like how are you meant to take care of somebody who's really struggling with addiction at
Yeah,
that level?
yeah. And the thing that I think about now is like, because I learned in the program and through therapy and stuff, is trying to detach with love, right? And it's so much harder. I've had friends with addiction and things, and it's easier to detach. But when it's your mom or your child, it's
Mm.
like you're going to give them a lot more passes and way more chances than anyone else.
Uh, yeah, absolutely. It's like when, parents of people that are struggling with addiction, you give a lot of leeway. I mean, my mom and dad, they dealt with a lot of shit, and they
Right,
dealt with it because they loved me and they didn't want to have to cut me off completely, or because they were worried that it would go too far and they would lose me. So they do the
right,
things, they do the things that you're not supposed to do for the person who's in that bad state. You give them the money. You
right.
take them
Yeah,
to the liquor store. You give you enable them, right?
totally.
Because you love them. But at the same time, like you're doing the thing that they want you to do for them,
Yep.
It's crazy.
No,
The
it's so hard.
the
And I talk about that in the book, like before my mom jumped in front of the van, like that was part of the turning point as well. As I finally got to a point where my mom was asking me for stuff and I said no. And I'm like, it's a weird feeling to be 17 and be like, no, like to be kind of this weird parental figure to your parents and have a
yeah.
moment where you're like, wait, I'm enabling this person. No. And my mom just being like, what? You can't say no to me. And I was like, well, I am. And it's a weird situation to
It's
be
a
in.
real yeah, it's a strange dynamic to be in because now you're the
Yeah,
one who's like, "I'm putting my foot down, this is enough."
right.
And then they're like,
Yeah,
"Are you kidding me?
right.
I'm your
Right.
parent. How dare
Right.
you speak to me like that?" Jeez.
Yeah.
Um, so what happens after that? What happens after you go to the military?
Yeah. So, I mean, the book ends with me joining the military. Spoiler alert, but and sorry, my dog is here, and if anyone hears
That's all
the
right.
shaking, my dog loves to shake his
Shake
collar.
shake his head.
He's just like, yeah, he's heard the story many times. But
Yeah.
so the army was like this great behavioral therapy. So I kind of went for 3 years. I was in Germany, Bosnia, and finally got my life together. Came home, in America, uh, the army kind of gives you a college money. So I went to college, graduated. So even though I dropped out of high school, it was like, wow, the army gave me these opportunities. So I got to go to college and graduate, taught high school English, got married, had 2 kids. And it's interesting, all through my 20s and early 30s was like, all I want is to not do what my mom did. So it's like, I just want, because we also were kind of in poverty when I was really little. So it's like I just want the
Mhm.
house, the American dream. I like want the house, 2 kids, a
Yeah.
dog, great job. So what happened was I got all that, and then in my 30s, mid 30s, all of a sudden I'm like, man, I've got everything I ever supposed to want, right? And I just started becoming super controlling, super addicted to excitement. It was like all these character defects started to come out. I remember my wife at the time just being like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't know. Like I should be so cool because I've got everything I wanted. And we went to marriage counseling, and
Yeah.
kudos to the marriage counselor at the time because she was asking me like, Chris, tell me about your story. And I was telling her everything that we just talked about, my mom. And she's like, have you heard about adult children of alcoholics? And gave me a pamphlet, or Al-Anon. And I'm like, I have not. And I'm looking at this pamphlet. And it's like characteristics of adult children of alcoholic, addicted to control, they're all the things. And I'm like, wow, this is everything that is wrong with
That
me.
you
You
are.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, everything's wrong. And it kind of led me on my recovery journey. And it's almost so naive to say, but I was like, wow, who would have thought there's all these effects? I always thought like I escaped and I started over, but it was like all that stuff changes your wiring, and I had no idea.
Well, yeah, and you're experiencing it all during your formative years, like from
Yeah,
12 to 20, your brain is growing and developing,
right.
and you're dealing with a circumstance that is role reversal, parent role
Totally.
reversal, you're being caretaker, um, you're taking over the parental role, and she's
Yeah,
taking over the child role of being, just in that sense where you guys are
yeah,
flip-flopping your roles. And obviously long-term effect later in life. I mean, you're not going to see it straight away, but I mean, I guess down the road is it kind of like starts
right.
to protrude out, because now you're like, you have all these characteristics that
Yeah,
have been like ingrained in you from
right.
12 years old.
Yeah. So that was a defining moment for me of like when I look back, I'm like, wow, my that was like my next act in life because all of a sudden I started going to therapy, started going to the Al-Anon meeting, started working the steps, getting a sponsor, and meeting other people, and it's so fascinating because especially when I was in high school and all this stuff that's going on, I always thought I had this like unicorn special situation. Then you get older and like and start going to meetings, and I'm like, wow, like so many people have, like I named my book, they have their scars, they have a story. Someone in a meeting one time said something like, no one had a perfect childhood. And it was like, wow, yeah, no one. Like, I think I was always searching for like, no, everyone else had this perfect childhood. And wow, I had this like weird,
Yeah.
unique thing in Chicago. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
like,
You're not that special. You're
no,
not
I'm
that
not that
fucking
special.
special, man. Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
know.
hard to think that you're not that special. You're
Yeah.
not. It's just it
No.
happens to tons of people all over the world. But that, what the brilliant thing about that is that it happens, but
Yeah.
you also now have a group of people that you can relate to. You're not unique, you know? Being
Right.
unique makes it harder because you don't have anybody else to rely on. You don't have anybody else to talk to when all that stuff, bubbles up inside, and you feel like, I really wish I had somebody who could relate to what I went through, and now you do.
Right.
Um, did
Yeah.
when you joined Al-Anon, are you still working in Al-Anon and going?
Yeah, I'm going to a meeting tonight, leading a meeting. I sponsor other people now, and it's one of those things I think, when I started going, I was like, oh, cool. And this is again the naive part of me. It's like, okay, I guess you work the steps, reach serenity, and like, peace out, everyone. See, good luck, newcomers.
Have a good one.
But yeah, but I've been going 12 and a half years, and I think it's just going to be a lifelong thing because I often find myself, those of you listening that are familiar with recovery and stuff, it's like I find myself at step one, step two, step three, like constantly, and it clearly needs to, it's one of those things I'm like I have to keep coming back because um, I just need it in my life. It's helped me so much to as you were saying, because the beautiful thing about knowing that I don't have this unique story is every meeting I go to, someone's going to say something that's going to resonate with me because I'm like, oh yeah, man,
Yeah.
that I needed to hear that.
Yeah, and then you can also help the people who are just starting on their journey, because
Right.
you might say something that they need to hear in that moment as well, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a two-way street, is that you guys can both kinda work off one another, and then it keeps you going in your recovery, and it helps them
Totally.
continue on theirs.
Yeah.
That's the
That's
beauty
it's
of it
def-
all, really.
yeah, it's definitely like 12-step work where it's like, okay, I'm, sharing the message and doing my part. And that's been the neat thing about the book coming out is all these people not even in Al-Anon that I work with or just know or don't know reaching out to me like, hey, your story helped me realize, this thing or that thing. Or maybe I'm going to start going to Al-Anon. I didn't even know what Al-Anon was. And it's like, that's great. So,
Yeah, that's the beauty of that kind of stuff, is that you being able to come out and be vulnerable and share your
right.
experience, that can resonate. It's like the butterfly effect. Just
Yeah.
you flapped your wings, and now it's gonna go out across the world. And people that might be too afraid to say their story will connect with it, on that level. And yeah, it might give them a chance to take the steps to either join Al-Anon or find recovery, or
Right.
go, oh, that's something that I went through, or that's something that I experienced. So that's a really great thing.
Yeah, it's been
um
pretty great.
yeah. um what else? So being a sponsor, what's that like?
It's
Have you
it's funny. It's funny because I've been doing it for a few years now, and it's totally on and off. And what I love about it is, I always joke in meetings. It's like as soon as my life, like I might reach a point in my life where I maybe need recovery, and maybe I'm not realizing it, or maybe I need some more Allen on my life. Like that's when my higher power is like, hey, guess what? You're going to use this stuff with someone else. It's like that's when my phone will ring, basically, when I'm going through it.
mm,
Like when I first moved out of so I got divorced 6 years ago. I remember the weekend I moved into my new apartment, I'm just like, oh man, I got to do this, I got to do that. That's when I get a phone call like, hey, I got your number from so and so in the program. Like, I need to talk to someone. Can you sponsor me? And it's like, wow. And I remember thinking like, I don't have time. But then as I'm talking to this person, sharing my experience, strength, and hope, I'm like, wow, this is actually what I absolutely need right now is to remind myself, I'm telling this person all of these things, but I'm like, wait, I kind of actually needed to hear this too in this moment. So sponsoring has been such a cool way for me to like, I don't know, just work the program in a different way, really.
yeah. Yeah, it gives you that, and it also brings you like that perspective that you need. Like, like you
Yeah,
were at a moment where you're like, oh, I got too much to do, I got too much going on. But then you got that phone call and it like pulled you back. And then
totally.
you were like, you know what? I'm here to help. I'm here to serve somebody, and it'll help to serve me. That's
Yeah,
I never went to a 12-step program ever. But I mean, honestly, I think they're great for the people that they work for. And I think it's amazing the stuff, the work that people do, because it is, in recovery, there's, you know, it's a tough road, and you need
yeah,
all the help you can get. And then, the more people out there doing the work and helping people, the better off
yeah,
people in recovery are, really. Um,
definitely.
s- yeah. So do you plan on writing any other books?
So yes, I'm working on a few now. Although it's interesting, the two books I'm working on now that are not well, one is I'm trying to work on a book of affirmations for like young men, and then a
Mm,
fiction book about vampires. So totally not related. Because I was like, I do need a break. I need a vulnerability break for myself. I'm like, it would be a fun
right.
exercise to write something and not have to be like, hey man, FYI, you're in this book. I changed your name, but like this thing happened. Because I had to have a lot of sensitive conversations with people, and I'm like, it would be nice to take a break. But I would like to write another one about like my army experience, because that was like a whole bunch of totally different things, and also trying to reckon with everything with my mom in a different country and stuff, and then everything that
Mm,
I learned. The epilogue to the book talks about my recovery journey, but it's super condensed. So I'd love to write a book at some point just about kind of the sequel of like, here you've read everything that happened, like here's really like how I did it.
yeah.
So that'd be
Like where the work started. Like, where did you?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that like? Where was that moment? Where was the moment where you were like, I'm gonna start going like to Al-Anon? What pushed you in that direction? Was there anything that pushed you in that direction, or did you find it naturally? Or
I mean, essentially, like I said, it was the outcome of really that conversation with the marriage therapist with my ex-wife. And because I was just like, this is just who I am. I don't know, maybe I'm a controlling person, or whatever. But I realized, I was like, oh, you know there's something different about my wiring, and I need to do something about it. So starting out on was just me trying to get on the right track. And I really have. I think it's important for people, whether you go to 12-step meeting, recovery, therapy, like when I encounter tough situations now, I'm always like, oh man, I pat myself on the back. I'm like, Chris 10 years ago would have handled this very differently. But recovery Chris, like, I paused, I took a walk, I brought, I'm probably the most calm Zen person I am now compared to like 15 years ago when I would just, be like, why did you buy this milk? I wanted you to buy that milk. Just, I don't know. It's been so helpful just to, yeah, be closer to higher power and yeah, have this community of folks that I could talk to about recovery and life. It's been amazing.
Yeah. Um, so is there anything else you'd like to discuss that you have coming up in the future? Anything you have going on, or anything that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, the book, like I said, is out there. If people want to check it out, it's on Amazon and all the places. The audiobook is out there too, which is super fun because when I put the book out, I didn't realize, we're on a podcast, but I didn't realize how many people listen to audiobooks. So people are like, when's the audiobook coming out? So there's an audiobook out on all the places.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's been fun. I'm also trying now. I learned so much about publishing the book. So a friend and I are putting together more talks about like how to write a book and publish a book. Because so many people have come to me like, I have my own story, I want to write it, and I'm like, okay, well, here's what I did. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to kind of package that. Whether it's just talking to people like you or what, just
Yeah.
sharing that journey because it is like we just said, it's so powerful to share you know people's stories
Yeah.
on a podcast like this and things like that.
Yeah, these platforms are important. But, no matter how big or small they are, the message is what's important. And that, like, I always say to people, like, I'm just hoping that I hit that one person who needs to hear
Yeah,
what's being said, you know? And I want people to have a perspective on recovery and addiction all over. So I'm giving them, you know, hopefully unique stories and unique methods of recovery, you know, that people can take from, and they can pick, the stuff that works for them and the stuff that might not work for them, or the path they want to go down, or the things that they might want to, look into. So it gives people the opportunity to have, you know, a plethora of options available to them because a lot of people don't know what to do. They don't know where to
no,
start.
yeah,
Like you said, you never heard of Al-Anon. You never
no,
heard of it. You didn't even know it existed
yeah,
until somebody
yeah,
mentioned it to you.
yeah,
So the
and,
more we
and
talk
even
about these things.
totally, totally, yeah, the more we talk about it, and even if it was now not just going to therapy, I think helped me so much just to realize like just to talk about it because totally as an aside, but like as a man, I was just like, no one ever asked me like, how are you doing really? Like, what's really going on? Like to work through my emotions and things like that. Like
Mhm.
that was a powerful thing in
Yeah.
therapy to really just understand like what emotion am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? Maybe so important.
Do you feel like you became more self-aware of like yourself and like the
Oh yeah.
reasons why you do the things you do? Like the reasons like, you have these little quirks, that you might.
Oh god. Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the most powerful things I think in the last 10, 12 years for me is like, oh, I'm doing that thing again because of X. And like, I know like was joking with someone recently. It's just like the cool thing about therapy and recovery is like you're starting to like retroactively build this instruction manual for yourself. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm doing
Yeah.
that thing because that thing happened when I was 8. Oh yeah, this is happening because of this. Oh, make sure you don't do this. It's like you put the pieces
Yeah.
together in a
Yeah.
different way.
I react this way because of this. I do this
Right.
because of that. It's always like yeah. And it's weird because you see it so much more now. Like you
Yeah.
see it. I,
Yeah.
I see it as a parent as well. I see tons of things that my dad did when I was growing up. The way he responded
Yeah.
to certain things, I respond similarly. And then I have to be like, fuck, shit.
Right.
Uh,
Yep.
no, don't do that. Don't do that. You didn't like that when you were a kid, and now you're responding the exact same way. Um,
Yeah.
so it is those things that like are ingrained in you because your parents did them. So now you do them. And then when you're a parent, that's the way you do it. But you know why? Because your dad did it that way or your mom did it that way, and then you have to kind of look back and go, oh, I
I
need to
know.
reel that in. That's not the way to do that.
Yeah. It's powerful though, just to know like again, all those things. It just sometimes it's a blessing and a curse because if you're self-aware and then you do the thing as you're doing it, you're like, oh, don't. and then you beat yourself up more sometimes. So that's
I feel
also kind of a
guilty. Yeah,
danger.
I feel a lot of guilt sometimes when
Yeah.
like if I get upset and I yell at my son or something because like my dad yelled for everything. Everything was it was like "Rah," you know, you get
Right.
really, you know, he wasn't mad. He wasn't mad. He wasn't angry, but everything his volume just goes up. So that's how I am. So if I
Mm,
start getting flustered, I'll start to talk really loud and then it seems like I'm angry, and my son
right.
is like, "Daddy, why are you angry?" And I'm like, "I'm not. I'm not angry. I'm
Yeah.
frustrated, and when I'm flustered, it comes out that way." But I really struggle how to figure out how to stop that from happening. Like, so I have to kind of like take a breath,
Yeah.
calm it down. You don't need to get upset, but
Gosh.
it is a thing that
Yeah.
that's constantly evolving in life and doing those
Yes.
things.
So much.
All right. So I have a question that I
Yeah.
ask at the end of the podcast, and it's three things that you need in your recovery. So, like, some people do journaling or yoga, or I like to run, I like to go out and do physical activity. What are three things that you need?
Mm. If I go over three, will I get in trouble? That's the question. Because I have a pretty
No,
good
no, no,
routine.
no.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Like,
Hit me with
well,
it. I want to hear it.
as I'm saying it though, I'm like, I should probably count it before I just say it. But that's such a great question. I really need my morning readers. I've got a good schedule with the morning readers. Um,
Okay.
Going to meetings, that's big. And
Yeah.
then I started probably 6 years ago, like a gratitude journal, and that's helped slowly rewire
Nice.
the
I
things.
like
I
that.
mean, there's other things too, like I need to call my sponsor, I need to talk to other fellowship with people, whatever. But those three, I think, are the cornerstone of like starting my day with meditation too. See, that's another one. The daily
Yeah.
readers, but
Yeah.
it's been so huge. So
Yeah, I just think those things are really important, like to hear other people's three
yeah,
things that they must have, because then, like, what if people go and listen to like the last, 10 guests or whatever, you now have like, you know,
totally.
30 things that you could pick from to use in your recovery, you know, and see which ones fit for you, see which ones don't. I mean, it just gives people options to like experiment with stuff like,
Yeah,
meditation might work, maybe a gratitude journal. That's the first time I've
yeah,
heard gratitude journal, and that's like a really cool one. I like that.
yeah.
That's really
And it's
nice.
easy. Like
The,
the gratitude journal one is funny because someone 6 years ago was like, because I was complaining about like I feel like I'm negative all the time, and I was. And she was like,
Same.
there's research that shows, spend every night writing 3 to 5 things you're grateful for. And like when I first started it felt silly because it felt like a diary, like, oh, today I had good coffee or today I went to lunch. But now, 6 years later, like I fill up a whole page with good stuff. And it has helped me like as I'm doing something now, I'm like, oh, this is good. This is going to go in my journal tonight. Like I want to remember this moment. And it's kind of slowly rewired my brain and my thinking, which is so cool.
I had a friend who suggested that I do that, like wake up and do like three
Yeah.
things you're grateful for, or just do that. Um, I didn't, and I should because I
You
think it's
should.
like
I'm just saying, James, it
because
works. I don't know.
but
But
no, I hear such good things about it. Like people say, like just if you do those things like on a
right.
daily basis, like you're saying, it rewires your thinking, it puts you in a more positive mindset. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's a space I struggled to stay in for a long period of time. So
Also
things like
same.
that. Yeah. When you start to get in a real negative space, like my dad was very pessimistic. So I ended up
Right.
being and my brother's the opposite. He's more of like a glass half full kind of guy. And I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
but this, that. And he's like, see, you're going negative. And I'm like, well, God damn it. It is. And he's like, well, you're always thinking of the worst case scenario. He's like, you got to be a
Yeah.
little bit more positive.
Yeah.
So,
Totally get it.
all right, gratitude journal. That's going to be my thing. I'm taking away from this is
I
gratitude
love it.
journal.
Hey,
I'll have to
I
wake
mean,
up.
the nice thing about that is I will say, and then I'll shut up. It's not like gratitude journal people are paying me to say this, but it is easy. I love the kind of habits where it's like because I'm a busy person and I need habits and things that don't take a lot of time. Like reading my couple. daily reader is going to take me a second. Gratitude journal is going to take me like 5 minutes at the end of the night. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
a big lift. Like even meditation, some days I'm like, I don't have 10 minutes, and I don't probably, but finding those little things is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is, isn't it? It's just those things that keep you in that good headspace, and
Yeah.
like, that's like, for me, starting this podcast was to help my recovery. I
Mm,
had a big recovery group in America that I was participating in and doing like school speaking and stuff like that. And I moved to the UK and I don't really have that type of space. So I had to create something for myself and also
mm,
for others, more importantly, was to connect with other people in recovery and like, you know, create a platform. And like, I don't know, I got fascinated with the idea of podcasting. Like I looked at it and I thought, oh, you know what? That might be cool. Like I could do that. But
yeah.
then I got real negative and was like, oh no, couldn't do that. I'd have to buy this. I'd have to do that. People
Right.
might not listen. It's gonna be like this thing. Like, oh, just. But then I just decided to be like, fuck it. I'm just gonna do it and just see what happens. And here we are.
Love
Here we're doing it. I've got like 40 episodes done. Like I'm very super proud of like what I've done so far. And I look forward to like giving more people the opportunity to come and share.
it. Yeah, that's amazing. No, you should be super proud. That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah, man. I honestly, I appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your story. And I'll make sure that all the links are attached to the video and the bios. So if you are interested in purchasing the book or having somebody read it to you, those are
There
options
you go.
available to you.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So we'll do all that. And Chris, I thank you for coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we pop off, man?
No, no. Again, just James, thanks for having me on, and thanks for just giving people a platform to share their story and their journey. So cool. I'm honored to be a part of it.
Oh, dude, I'm so glad that you reached out, like that we could do this and share your story and you know um, keep helping people, helping people find recovery and however
Yeah,
that is for them. So thanks a lot.
I love it.
Yeah, me and my boys going crazy in 23, like MJ, but we ain't never gonna fade away. We ain't never gonna fade away. Me and my boys going crazy in 23, like MJ, but we ain't never gonna fade away. We ain't never gonna fade away. Me and my boys going crazy in 23, like MJ, but we ain't never gonna fade away. We ain't never gonna fade away. Oh no, oh no. Me and my boys going crazy in 23, like MJ, yeah. We ain't never gonna fade away. We ain't never gonna fade away. Oh no, oh no. Me and my boys going crazy in 23, yeah, like MJ, but we ain't never gonna fade away. We ain't never gonna fade away. Oh no, me and my boys going crazy